Hey guys, this is Calm. I'm coming back to you with the 13th round. This is Mamedyarov playing white against Sergei Movsesian. He is 2680 from Armenia. Okay, so we see Mamedyarov starting with d4, d5, c4, c6, so we've got a Slav. I'm never really sure how I like to play against the Slav, because it can get complicated. I feel like a lot of the lines I like to play, I get into just via my normal move order with 3 knight c3 here, but at the same time I feel like I can go into the semi-Slavs in basically all those lines, because I'm not doing anything to prevent it, and then if we do go into that, I'm in a position where I'm really uncomfortable because you need to know a lot of theory, and I kind of just like to just have a simple way to play, so I'd ideally not go into that. So you can do sidelines, like you can play knight f3 here for example, or just a quick e3 or something like that, but it doesn't really offer white as much in the other lines, so it's always a kind of complicated struggle for me. So I guess we'll see what Mamedyarov plays here, and hopefully he can enlighten me. Knight c3, knight f6, e3, okay. So this is like one of the less critical lines. If you play something like bishop g5 and e6, well, I don't know, maybe not this exact move order, but basically if you play a line where black can take on c4 and hold on to it, it gets incredibly complicated very fast because white doesn't get the material back, but he gets attacking compensation for it in terms of space in the middle. But it's very hard to quantify that, and as such the person who knows the theory better is going to be a huge advantage, especially in short time control things, because they're just going to know the best moves. You're going to be spending time, and if you get the move correct, they're going to be able to instantly respond to you, and if you get it wrong, there's a reason why that's generally not, the move that's played most normally. So it's always kind of awkward. So by playing e3, I kind of like this choice because although we're sacrificing a better potential position for this bishop, it means we're not going to get into those lines where we can't take back on c4. So a6 is played, so this is an a6 Slav now. Fusion plays this, or at least he used to, I don't know if he still does. Queen c2. It makes sense to develop this now because if we develop our bishop first, black's just going to take on here as soon as we've moved our bishop, so we're going to expend 2 tempi to take here if we move our bishop first, whereas if we move our queen first to a position where we want our queen anyway, this is more active, it connects our rooks later on once we've moved our 3 other pieces, and also by being here it prevents bishop f5 coming in, and if black were to make the mistake of taking immediately now, it means that white can take on c4 without having spent that extra tempi on the first bishop move. G6 is played to allow bishop f5, knight f3. It makes sense to wait on bishop d3 until bishop f5 is played, I guess. Bishop g7, and now we play it because we've developed our other pieces as much as we're really wanting to do. Maybe we could play bishop d2, but we want to make sure we castle relatively soon, so castles, bishop g4. So I like knight e5 in these lines because we gain a tempi on the bishop because they don't really want to give up a bishop pair so early, and our knight gets into a better position. So I'm never really sure about this bishop g4 move from black, but at the same time, the only other real place you could put it is, say, bishop e6, and that seems kind of weird because it can immediately be attacked by, say, knight g5 instead. But yeah, I'm unconvinced about these bishop g4 lines, although I'm sure it's theory. So knight e5 is played, and then bishop e6 back. So yeah, I'm not overly convinced on the usefulness of this bishop g4 move. b3 and c5 is played by black. So b3 I like because it's just solidifying, it's opening up space to develop our bishop in either a3 or b2. We just have slightly more space. So black, from his point of view, can see that. So he needs to kind of fight back against that somehow. He could go for an immediate b5, I guess, and put a question to this pawn, but likely speaking the response to that would be c5, which covers the b6 and d6 squares permanently. Means that white just has more space there, and then we can attack against this b5 pawn via a4 maybe. So black decides to go about it via c5, which is a pretty attacking reply, tactical. And the idea is that if white takes here, this pawn is quite easy to regain later on, and also we're opening up this knight to discoveries from our bishop. So after pawn takes, if we move this knight somewhere, say knight d7, you know, attacking this knight, threatening to recapture here after trades, we're threatening to pick this pawn back up again, and if it's supported by something like b4, we can just have some natural move like knight c6, well not knight c6, we've already moved that, but basically we have attacks along this long diagonal, and that's meant to offer compensation in terms of just allowing this capture here. Maybe something better after d takes c would be knight e4 or something, attacking this knight via this bishop, and then if, you know, this knight was left here and this knight moves out the way, c3 is doubly attacked. C takes d5 is played first, which is okay. It's good, so if those tricks work out for black, it's definitely the case that we want to leave the pawn on d4 because it helps support this knight. So c takes d5 instead. Knight takes, bishop takes. It seems that white's just kind of opting for a kind of trading down. No, okay, I see. So the point here is that he wants to take the c5 pawn, but the way I mentioned earlier with d takes c is kind of risky. So what he's doing is he's trying to get rid of the pieces in front of his queen and be able to take on here with the queen and leave this pawn on d4. So by doing this, he has to take with, well, he wants to take with a knight here, because if he takes with the bishop, we gain the bishop pair. If he takes with the queen, we can take his queen. So he has to take with a knight. And then after we take here, if he takes with the queen, we have moves such as bishop e4, which forces the queen to move, and it can't go to d7 to protect b7. So we're winning material, so he has to take with the bishop. And then once he's done this, we have this queen takes c5 move, so we're picking up the pawn that way. Potentially we can win it, black can win it back actually looking at it with bishop takes e5, pawn takes, bishop takes g2, because then after king takes g2, d3 will hang via this queen. So maybe black isn't actually losing any material, but he's having to resort to tactics to kind of get there, and he would lose his dark square bishop in that case, which means this one could be very strong on say b2 later. Yeah, I would imagine he takes on c5 now, just given the kind of what the trades on here kind of suggested. So yeah, let's trade here. And then I thought bishop takes g2, maybe there's something else, but immediately I'm just trying to look to regain my material. So okay, it's played. And rook d1 is played instead. So this means that black can retreat this bishop and keep it, but this bishop is kept as well. It's also somewhat dangerous, because we can move this bishop to say bishop e4 and threaten to, I don't know, win this bishop or the b7 pawn, and either for discovery via the rook on the queen. But we can't do that immediately, which is what black's kind of relying on. And the reason for that is that these rooks aren't connected yet, this bishop needs to move. Say to bishop a3, because then that would also put pressure on e7. So knight d7 is played instead. Hits the queen with tempi, helps develop a piece, so that's a good move. Queen goes back. Bishop f3 to hit the rook. It's probably the best move, but at the same time it helps white a bit in that you can play rook d2. This rook is now supported by the bishop, and in the future when this bishop moves we'll be able to play this rook to d1 and double on the d file quickly. Also have to be a bit wary about queen f4 or something attacking this bishop. But maybe he wants to do this move first because he thinks he's gaining a tempo on the rook, and then he'll be able to play something like b5 and retreat this bishop to b7, which is better than c6 because being on c6 would restrict our b-pawn movement if white ever gets a rook on c1, which is quite likely. So rook d2, bishop c6 is played immediately. So yeah, I don't understand why bishop f3 first, because I would say, relatively speaking, rook is better on d2 than d1 because of the opportunity to double. Now e6 is played by white. So here we have double pawns. It's equal material, but we have a lot more space. Our pieces are more developed as white. So given that this is a disadvantage to us because it's doubled, what we can do is play e6 and essentially give that pawn up for even more speed of development, and also to kind of work against black's pawn structure a bit. Because if he plays f takes e here, which is kind of the obvious move, he's going to have double pawns which are isolated, so they're not going to be worth too much. Admittedly, if we had the extra pawn it would be better, but the compensation we get for that is we're going to be able to play bishop b2 maybe next move, or bishop c4 first, threatening this. So we may regain it very quickly, and the strength of our moves is going to be more amplified given that the openness of this diagonal, especially since black gave his dark square bishop for this knight earlier on. So I'm actually really liking this position for white now. I think pretty much the only move is take here. Yeah. And now I think bishop c4 first, because if bishop b2 first you can play e5, which hits the queen and is protected by this knight. So bishop c4 first would essentially pin this pawn because it's against the king, which would force black into something awkward like rook f6, and then bishop b2 or something like it is going to put, you know, a discovery attack on this rook, and if this rook ever moves then e6 falls, so it's starting to look really awkward for black. So bishop c4 is played, rook f6 is played, bishop b2, queen f8. Bishop takes c4 check, rook takes, queen h8 check, king f7, queen takes h7 check. I guess the king is escaping via this square, e8, so that doesn't seem to work. So I'd say what we want to do is basically just move our queen somewhere so we discovery attack this rook, then we'll be able to take this next move or pick up the exchange. So queen g4 is played, probably one of the best moves because it's not in line with any moves that can develop and hit the queen, and also it helps support the attack on e6. So knight c5 is played, just giving up the material. White doesn't necessarily have to take it immediately. You might want to play something like rook d1 first, but at the same time it can be risky to allow moves like knight e4 or something. You know, hitting the rook in f2 again quickly, and obviously this rook hits f2, so I'd probably just be tempted to trade immediately, which he does. Queen takes, because otherwise we pick up e6. Doubles the rooks. Okay, f4, so this is a clever move, because all black's counterplay is based on attacking on the f-file. So if we move this f-pawn up, we essentially negate all of that, and we're also putting a strong wall up against the potential breaks black can have against it with g5 and e5. e5 can't happen immediately, otherwise it would probably be a good move because of the pin. And it also helps prevent against bishop f3 moves, which was threatened here. Actually, why didn't he play it? I guess he couldn't play it immediately because of rook d8 check. And then after the rook trade, this rook's here with check, so it wouldn't have worked then. But after rook f8 it is threatened because that back rank thing isn't a check, so f4 is a nice move. Queen c3 attacking e3, queen e2 back, and back. White's just looking to trade rooks. Essentially when you're material up you just want to trade down to an endgame which is likely winning. So we're up in exchange here as white, and black only has one pawn in compensation, and that pawn he has is doubled and isolated, so it should pretty much be an easy winning endgame if white can trade material off. Queen f5. He's trying to get his queen on e4 maybe, or something else on e4, just surround white's king to get some kind of cheapo there. b4, knight e4. This also allows the b3 square for bishop retreat later on. Also allows bishop d3 to be played, which can potentially pin something on e4 against the queen. So knight e4, trades a pair of rooks, and then bishop d3. So black doesn't have any immediate checks or anything, so it looks like we're trading down an additional piece, which is good for white. Plays queen g2 now. It's kind of interesting that he's putting himself in the pin, but it's kind of a weird one in that because black himself is pinned via this queen against, via his knight against this queen, this queen actually repins. It means this queen can't move, because if it does then we'd be able to take on e4 twice. That's kind of a weird move, you don't see that very often. Just king f7, a3 protecting his pawn for any potential trades. b5, h3, potentially to allow queen g4 in future, trade off the queens. King e8, bishop c2, queen h5, queen g4, queen h6. You see black's very much trying to hold on to his queen, because he knows that if those go, his endgame is just losing basically. Now with the king in the middle and the queen kind of off sides, I think we can just take on e4 and then take on e6, and we're hitting the bishop and we're also threatening a mate via queen g8, so yep, takes, queen takes e6, bishop f5, queen g8. Okay, it's not mate because we have queen f8, but after queen f8 we have rook d8 check. And then when the king takes the rook we can take the queen, so we're up a queen for a bishop. And black resigns here. Cool, so that was round 13. So we have 2 rounds to go. And yeah, I'll see you in the next vid.